Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. Minister, I think you'll agree there's nothing more important or no more important responsibility for a government and a Minister for Agriculture and Food than to ensure the safety of food consumed by the citizens and the people of this state. Now, the food industry is a vital one for the country, and its ultimate success depends on absolute confidence and trust in its operation, in its processes, and above all, in its products. And obviously, complete transparency is required at all times. Now, in relation to the contamination of beef products by horse meat and pig DNA, the Minister yesterday said that he was told only on Monday last for the first time. And I accept the Minister's word, but could I put it to you, Minister, do you think it's acceptable that even though tests were conducted in November and results were available in November which were positive for such contamination, that a government minister was only told last Monday about an issue so grave and so profound in relation to the reputation of the industry, and that his own departmental officials were told on the 21st of December by the FSAI and were sought and asked to cooperate with the FSAI? Do you think it's acceptable that the officials did not tell the minister in December about such a serious issue, and is it acceptable? Furthermore, could you indicate, Minister, who is heading up the investigation into this? The personnel, the person who's leading it? Is the Food Safety Authority of Ireland involved in the investigation? And do we have independent experts involved in trying to find out what happened here? Furthermore, I would ask the Minister if he could indicate whether the government is now prepared to introduce a traceability system for horses, similar to that which exists for cattle, for pigs and for sheep.
Thank you.
My colleague Deputy Keller asked last March, following a TV documentary on TV3 in relation to this issue in terms of illegal slaughtering of horses, and there was a major Sunday Times expose on this. And the Minister confirmed in his reply to Deputy Kelleher that there was no central database. Now, I understand that the number of horses slaughtered in this country has rocketed to 20,000 last year. So there are clearly issues in that sector. And in that reply, the Minister did not commit to establishing such a traceability system. Will he now have a rethink on that, and will you commit the government to establishing such a traceability regime, which I think is important in terms of safety and traceability of horses and subsequent products?
Firstly, can I say that the government absolutely would agree with all deputies, I think, in this House, that our food industry is a critical part of our economic activity in this country. It is critical for our export sector, and it is critical for jobs. That is why we have such a high standard of oversight of food production in this country, the best, I would say, in the world. In terms of the focus on this issue, I think it is important to reiterate that this is not a public health issue. It is an issue that doesn't relate to food safety, but it is an issue that relates to food standards. And in that regard, I think it is important, some of the questions that have been asked, for example, in the United Kingdom, because they don't do the level of testing that we do here. And our Food Safety Authority not only is focused on ensuring that no contaminants that would impact on the health of individuals go into any food product, but that the food products are as labelled. So those high standards, I think, have been acknowledged even in the last 24 hours. To answer the specific questions raised by the Deputy, it obviously will be a matter for the Food Safety Authority to conclude its current investigations. They're being assisted by the Department of Agriculture and Food and the Marine, whose inspectors have gone into the meat plants. I understand that the most recent testings, the results of those will be available and made public this afternoon. It is important that we approach this entire episode in a completely open and transparent way. I think that the sequence of events as laid out by Minister Coveney yesterday is clear to the House, it is clear to the public, so that we can have confidence in robust systems. And where failings occur, that they will be identified because our systems are so robust. In terms of what might follow on in terms of further legislation or further food tracing systems, all of that can be addressed once we find the source of the current contamination and give absolute assurances to the Irish people who consume these products and to any exporter who buys an Irish product that the highest standard that we are determined to maintain are in place, and that there is no threat either to the safety or health of anybody, and that's quite clear already, but also that the product that is labelled is the product that people get.
Thank you,
You didn't answer the central question I asked you. The tests were completed in the end of November, the first batch of tests, and they were positive in relation to the contamination. There was a further set of tests carried out in December. They were equally positive. Why wasn't the Minister told in November or December that such tests were being carried out and that the results of such tests were positive? That's the fundamental question. And do you think it's acceptable that the Minister for Agriculture and Food, whose responsibility this is, and the Minister for Health, obviously, over the SFAI, but why wasn't Minister Coveney told in November or December by his officials, or by the officials in the FSAI, that a major issue in relation to the reputation of our food industry had arisen? Now, I don't think it's a good enough answer to say, well, we had to get it confirmed in Germany before we tell the Minister. Now, I asked this yesterday again, and I didn't get an answer to that. And there still is no answer to it. And in the replies yesterday, there was no reference to it. So can you answer that? Do you think it's acceptable that the Minister wasn't told, number one, that tests were going on, that two, the results of the tests were positive?
Thank you.
I think this was laid out in some detail yesterday by Minister Coveney. And I'll give you the sequencing again, just for clarity. The first samples were taken by the FSAI as part of one of their snapshot surveys that they do periodically across all food production in this country, and was done in mid-November and sent for analysis to a private laboratory. In December, the Food Safety Authority of Ireland took further samples at retail level and again had them analysed in a private laboratory. Following this process, all of the initial samples, which tested positive, were sent for analysis to a German laboratory. And the results of that analysis, which is the conclusive results from the German laboratory, were received by the FSAI on Friday, the 11th of January, which was last Friday. And the FSAI informed the Department of Agriculture of the results last Monday, the 14th of January. Once that information was received in the Department of Agriculture, obviously the Minister was informed, and the Minister informed the Cabinet at its first opportunity, which was the next day, which was Tuesday.
The Minister should have been informed in November and
well, in terms of, I think that you're going into a level of detail now. I am not.
Very basic question.
I'm not.
Sorry, we won't have a conversation across the floor, thank you. Through
the chair. I think
time is
it really is important. It really is important because the food industry in this country and the thousands of jobs that depend on it are such importance that we do this in a measured, open, transparent way. And obviously, the detailed, until I know what exactly information the FSAI had at any given point, they pass it on at the appropriate point. And all of this...
We know what information they had in November.
Sorry, Deputy, please.
I just want to straight answer.
Sorry, please.
All of this...
Thank you, Minister.
All of this, the sequencing, the degree of knowledge, the quality of the result can be put in very clear questions to the Minister for Agriculture. He'll lay it out in a completely open, in a completely transparent way. And let us all work to ensure, number one, that the regulatory regime, the food safety standards, and the oversight procedures we have in this country have worked. They identified it. It was here. Irish product was examined by Irish authorities and made known by Irish authorities so that the standards that we demand will be and are being maintained.
Thank you. Deputy MacDonald.
Minister, this morning the latest survey from the Irish League of Credit Unions reveals that 1.6 million people are left with just €50 or less to spend at the end of each month after they meet their household bills. And the survey reflects that since October last, an additional 230,000 people have fallen into that bracket. And this, of course, is a direct result of your austerity policies and your most recent austerity budget. And that is before the dreaded family home tax is imposed. Now, this family home tax is, of course, the brainchild of Fianna Fáil, and it will have serious implications for households who are already teetering on the brink. It will especially punish those on low and middle incomes. It will punish social welfare recipients and even those with disabilities. It takes no account of ability to pay. It takes no account of people's mortgages, the amounts they paid in stamp duty, or indeed negative equity. So you're nearly 2 years in office, and your response to those struggling with huge mortgages is to lump more taxes on them. And this, Minister, is a tax too far. So can I ask you, where do you propose that 1.6 million people will get the money to pay this family home tax? And these, bear in mind, aren't just families who are dependent on social welfare payments. Many of them are working families. Many of them are families in which 2 people are out at work, but they simply cannot afford this family home tax. So where are they getting the money, Minister Howlin? And how many more citizens will be pushed over the brink by this family home tax?
Thank you. Minister.
It never ceases to amaze me, you know, the notion that we can have a debate as if we were in a vacuum, that we weren't in the economic crisis that every household in this country knows we're in. I'm acutely aware, and the government is acutely aware, of the pressure that is on citizens across this state because of the economic catastrophe that this country met because of bad political and economic decisions made in recent times. The Deputy is referring to a survey done by the Irish League of Credit Unions. I think it's interesting to note that the CSO publication of this week, published on the 14th of January, just in terms of savings, because I think it's an interesting fact, because these are factual, it's not a survey, it's not an opinion, these are the factual issues, that the gross savings ratio has actually increased in the last quarter of last year. Savings were at an unprecedented level of 14.5%, and they increased in the last quarter of last year to 16%. So the normal saving situation in a functioning economy is of the order of 7%. So I think one of the things we need to do is actually get people to spend money in the economy rather than to save it. The strategy of this government from the very beginning, is focused on jobs, restoring the economy, getting the economic infrastructure right so that we can create jobs. And for the 3 years before this government came to power, a staggering 250,000 private sector jobs were lost. It's almost mind-numbing. 250,000 private sector jobs were lost. So of course that impacted on households across the country and their capacity to pay bills. But we have begun the process of reversing that. In the last 12 months, 12,000 net new jobs in the private sector have been created. We have a number of labour market activation measures. We have a job strategy cabinet this afternoon. From the very beginning, our focus is on getting our economy repaired and people back to work, to lift people out of the pressures that the government has talked, or that the opposition has talked about. Can I just say this? The notion that when faced with an enormous deficit, that you can continue to fund services to the level that we have and not increase taxes is fanciful. And the deputies opposite know that. So we have a clearly defined strategy to repair our economy, to work towards a balanced budget, to have stimulus and job creation measures that are working demonstrably, including the jobs initiative that we took within 100 days of coming to office, that has resulted in, instead of the decline, and the deputy is talking, some of the discordant voices talk about individual sectors. Take tourism, which would be important to counties like Kerry. Fáilte Ireland reported that there are 5,000 net additional jobs in that sector since we took the initiative on the jobs initiative within 100 days. These are measures to address the issue of poverty, to address the issue of joblessness, and our efforts are working demonstrably.
Thank you. Deputy MacDonald.
I certainly hope that the Minister isn't questioning the validity of the survey carried out by the League of Credit Unions, although it sounded remarkably like that. Minister, you certainly do live in a vacuum or a bubble if you are unaware of the extent to which households are struggling, and the League of Credit Unions are truthfully and accurately reflecting that reality. You cannot expect people to spend in the domestic economy if they do not have the money to spend. I would have appreciated an answer to my question. So perhaps when you take to your feet for a second time, you might do me that courtesy. I want to know where it is that these 1.6 million individuals and their families will find the additional resources to pay your family home tax. I suspect that you haven't given me a straight answer because you know full and well that those individuals and their families have no prospect whatsoever of finding that additional resource. And what that means, Minister, for those individuals and their families is not additional savings. It'll mean for them additional hardship and additional debt. You rushed this proposal for the family tax that you borrowed from Fianna Fáil, rushed it through this Dáil. Perhaps those on the government benches hadn't fully thought through the implications of that tax. Today's survey from the credit union asks you to do just that. With €50 a month disposable income, that's €12.50 a week disposable income, individuals and their families cannot pay a family home tax. It's a tax too far. So Brendan Howlin, Minister, tell me where those individuals and those families identified in this survey are going to find the €3 or €4 or €500 per annum that you are demanding from them.
Thank you. Minister.
I'm acutely aware, and this government is acutely aware, of the pressures on individuals, and I said that in my initial reply. But Mary Lou MacDonald, Deputy, doesn't listen. Can I say that I am acutely aware, and this government is acutely aware, of the pressure on families, and the impact of additional taxation on families. And the job of this government is to maintain basic services to people. Funding. We're doing that by borrowing over €1 billion a month, notwithstanding the additional burden in taxation that has been placed on people. But the objective of broadening the tax base.
Thank you.
The objective of broadening the tax base is to be in tandem with every other progressive country. Every other country that has a social democratic view of how taxation should be levied. That we don't levy taxes exclusively on labour and work. That we broaden the base to ensure that there was a time when deputies opposite actually saw assets as something that should be taxed. And the biggest asset most people have is their own house, and that is taxed. That is taxed in.
Please, thank you.
That is taxed in most jurisdictions. But let me get back to the point, because I'm certainly not in any way casting any doubts on the survey. I'm sure it's very genuine and very honest and very clear. But I'm saying what the facts in relation to savings are, and they have increased in the last quarter of last year by over €1 billion.
Sorry, we're over time. Thank you.
So, in truth, this government's ambition is very clear. What we need to do is we need to work towards a balanced budget over time, which we're doing, and that means squeezing expenditure as best we can while maintaining public services. We need to broaden the tax base in accordance with the agreed programme for government. We need a stimulus plan for jobs and job creation to create the environment so that people who are under pressure, who are out of work, can get work. And thirdly, we obviously need a banking debt solution, which we're working on as well. So the economic strategy of the government is bearing fruit. We understand the pressures that people are under, but we are offering a solution rather than decrying the calamitous situation that this government inherited from its predecessors.
Thank you. Deputy Halligan, on behalf of the technical group. Thank you.
Thank you, Count Corla. First of all, Count Corla, can I wish you well for the year, as I do all Oireachtas members, the staff in the House and the press. Minister, Ireland's unemployment rate is now the 4th highest in the EU, with long-term unemployment accounting for 60% of people who are unemployed. Only massive emigration is keeping unemployment below the 500,000 mark. Surely you will concur that the onset of the economic downturn is undoubtedly one of the greatest ever threats to public health in the history of the state. Having no job is seen as an economic problem, yet it damages the physical and mental health of people that are unemployed, causing heart disease, high blood pressure, depression and anxiety. However, the links between unemployment and health are receiving little or no attention from the government or policy makers. Job losses associated with elevated rates of mental and physical health problems, increase in mortality rates, and detrimental changes to family relationships and in the psychological well-being of spouses and children. The Irish Mental Health Commission, Minister, the EU and the World Health Organization have all released reports recently with strong statistics showing the negative effect of the recession on national psychological health and well-being. And in Ireland, Minister, today, mental health across the general population, and particularly amongst men, has deteriorated since the recent onset of the austerity measures that have been introduced and the austerity before that over the last number of years. Our suicide levels are increasing.
The phone somewhere, thank you.
I don't actually know. Our suicide levels are increasing at an alarming rate, particularly among young men that are unemployed. And figures by the Irish suicidology suggest that for every 1% increase in unemployment, there's an increase of 0.7% of suicides in Ireland. My question to you, Minister, is, with 700,000 people on or below the poverty line in this country, over 200,000 children going to school hungry or without proper clothing, yet 2 national organisations which advocate for those people have seemingly been ignored by this government. St. Vincent de Paul and Social Justice Ireland. I will ask you this, Minister. Why was there not an in-depth social impact assessment taken prior to the publication of the budget in order to ensure the position of these people experiencing poverty and social exclusion would not be worsened by austerity measures? And will you give a commitment to this House now, prior to the publication of the National Social Report for 2012, that you will agree to this impact study, you will set up a task force which will comprise of the St. Vincent de Paul, Social Justice Ireland, MABS, the Commission on Mental Awareness in Ireland and Aware, to deal with this serious health problem associated with unemployment in Ireland.
Thank you. Minister.
From the very establishment of this government, in fact before it, during the process of discussing a programme for government, both parties were absolutely clear that the #1 objective of the government was economic recovery, and a core part of that, and the #1 issue for the government, was the creation of jobs. The government fully accepts the point made by the Deputy, that the impact of joblessness is huge on the mental and physical well-being of our people, on the economic well-being of our people, on the structure of our society itself. And that's why it has been at the heart of everything we've tried to do from the very beginning of the establishment of this government. That's why within 100 days, as I said, we established the First Jobs Initiative. We set out our strategy in terms of repairing our economy, creating an environment where people could invest, with some significant success to date. We have a ways to go, there's no doubt about that. But we have the strategy to address those issues, and I can lay them out in some detail to you what has happened. The first thing, of course, was to abandon the failed strategy of our predecessor government, which sought to build an economy on property, on banking and on debt, to move to a different economy that was based on enterprise, on exports and innovation. It was actually what recovered us at the end of the 90s, that strategy. We're working towards that again, as I said, with some very significant success. But we've a ways to go, because the level of unemployment is wholly unacceptable, and I accept that. And this government accepts that. That's why we're determined to work might and main to do something about it. But we have, as I said, moved in the right direction. I've said the IDA reported 12,000 net new jobs in the last 2 years, the IDA itself. Enterprise Ireland, 3,804 new jobs in 2012. The Irish exports in 2011 reached the highest level ever at 173 billion, exceeding the boom levels. And in the 3 years, 2008 to 2010, we lost 40,000 jobs in the export sector. In 2011, we gained an additional 10,000 jobs. And I've already said, in terms of Fáilte Ireland, we've had the first significant rise in employment in the tourism sector since 2008. So the strategies are working. We have a ways to go. We're very aware that this is our #1 priority, and that's why we have a special cabinet meeting devoted to this, with every minister making a series of proposals which will be drawn together this afternoon.
Thank you. Deputy Halligan,
Minister, with respect to you, I think you're out of touch with reality. Over the Christmas period, many thousands of people throughout the country had no heating, no television service, no proper food. My question to you is to acknowledge, first of all, that this is the case. My second question to you was, if that is the case, the people that work in the frontline services, like the St Vincent de Paul and Social Justice Ireland, who you ignored in the previous budget, now is an opportunity for you to undo the mistake that you made in this budget and the previous budget. Bring in those groups who are working with those people. Those people, the 700,000 people, they are our people, your people and my people, who voted for us, who put their trust in us in the last election so that they could have a better quality of life. Instead, they're condemned to poverty, despair and desolation. I would appeal to you again, and I'm not going to get into an argument, I'm not into confrontation, I'm into conciliation. I would ask you again to meet Social Justice Ireland, the St Vincent de Paul individuals, like I have met and many other deputies here. Listen to what they have to say, and I think it might shock you.
Thank you.
Rather than be talking to them for 5 or 6 minutes, I believe you did not meet the St Vincent de Paul before the last budget. I would urge you now to set up this task force, and you would be doing a great service to all of those people that are ill on the unemployment system.
Thank you. Minister.
Well, just for clarity, not only did I meet Social Justice Ireland, if the deputy is listening, and the Vincent de Paul before the budget, so did Minister Noonan. Social Justice Ireland were in my department this week in a formal meeting with the Secretary-General of my department. So we are very much aware and in touch, and I know the Deputy will acknowledge that. We are aware of the impact of the economic catastrophe that has befallen this country. But there's no point in decrying it. We have to present solutions and hope to people. And we've set out our journey to recovery. We've travelled a fair degree of that journey, but we've a ways to go, and we know there are people who are hurting badly, and we're going to do everything we can to sustain the supports we have, and we have to borrow to do it in terms of social protection, health, education and so on, and at the same time ensure that we create an environment that will have growth back in our economy, jobs and investment back in our economy, and break away from the dependency on the Troika so that we can make our own economic decisions. And I think we are, as I said, on the path to that recovery. And I think people will fairly stay with this government because they know that we're competently walking down that road.
That completes leaders' questions for today. We now move on